Welcome, Canada, and of course, the lawyers hired by the Muslim Brotherhood to keep an eye on me. How you doing? But today, we have an extra special show where we're actually going to work together because the government is building concentration camps, and hopefully even the Muslim Brotherhood understands how that's going to go horribly wrong for everyone, including them. So that's going to be the main story. Internment camps by the government. We have proof. I'm looking at the federal government website right now. It's insane. We also have the Coney Barrett hearings and their insanity. We have Justin Trudeau blaming Stephen Harper for COVID and then blaming the Conservatives for criticizing him and not working the Canadians' best interest, even though he shut down the Parliament. We have the Charlie Hebdo attacks, the Hindu girl in India decapitated for refusing to convert to Islam, and so much more. All right. The top story tonight, and what should be everywhere in Canada, but is not, is the fact that the Canadian government is going to be building literal internment camps, or concentration camps, whatever you want to call them, or federal quarantine/isolation sites. Ooh, here they are. So you can see, this is the government of Canada. This isn't like a QAnon Twitter account with 3,700 followers saying, big deals coming, no. This is the Canadian federal government talking about needing service providers for federal quarantine isolation sites. So if you want to bid on a contract to help arrest and detain your fellow Canadians, bidding's open for another 5 days, guys. So if you really want to be part of this nonsense, feel free. All right. It's hard to break this one down in a way that isn't so obvious. I mean, I've been told that the closest I'm allowed to get to swearing at this studio is what the heck. So whenever you hear me say what the heck, just substitute that in with an F-bomb. And if you can do me a favor and just find your children and just make sure they know that I am swearing. So just swear at your kids or call up your priest or pastor or rabbi, imam, astrology professor, whoever it is you pray to. And just, if you can call them up and drop a couple of swears on my behalf, I greatly appreciate that, because this is a big what the heck is going on here with the federal government. Know what's going on? They're building federal quarantine/isolation sites to deal with COVID-19. There is so much to unpack here. Now, where do we start? Do we start with the fact that the COVID numbers and the misrepresentations of them, and the fact that testing has gone up 800%, but positive cases have gone up 25%, which is a pretty reasonable increase if you increase testing by 800%. So, I mean, the thing there is if the testing goes up times 8, but the cases only go up by 2.5, that's a pretty decent, that kind of means it's stable, okay? So if we're looking at the data and the best way to deal with this, let's listen to the expert, listen to the scientists, right? The National Post the other day finally ran an article showing a model that says that strict lockdowns will end up killing more people than they save. And using the logic that I outlined on a video in early May. And what they said we should be doing is what I said we should have been doing from the start is we should have been letting the low-risk population venture outside. So at the beginning, when we didn't know what's going on, lockdown, 14 days to flatten the curve, we were all behind that. I did the videos, we don't need to go over that. But once we learned that this virus was not killing young people, that if you are under the age of 30, you're more likely to be killed by a strike of lightning than the coronavirus, right? 99.999% survival rate. The old people it's killing, they still have like a 97% survival rate. So the real thing we should have been doing is the push towards herd immunity because this virus was not deadly. If it was killing 20% of people, I'd be all for this, right? There'd be bodies on the streets. But because it was 0.0000003%, I said, what we should be doing is, if you are living with your grandparents, lockdown, don't go to school. But if you are living with people who are low risk, and you yourself are low risk, we should have been letting those people sort of go about into society, keep the number stable, right? The number of ICU beds probably wouldn't have been needed, and then we'd be pushing towards herd immunity like Sweden has. Sweden has no mask mandates. They have no lockdowns. They have no social distancing measures anymore. Everyone just was told to act reasonable, and now the numbers are coming down because they did it. And we have this data, right? And now we have the expert. Now we even have the WHO. Even the WHO is coming out and saying lockdowns are ineffective. So all the listen to the expert, listen to the scientist people, it's now, whoa, don't do that. We just want lockdowns. We want fear. We want the curb money, whatever it is. So this is the most unscientific thing I've ever seen, these quarantine isolation sites. And we saw videos in the government and the Canadian, when questioned in Parliament, the Liberals were saying, well, we got people, traveling, coming in, and blah, blah, blah. So if these are two sort of lockdown problematic travelers, that is, again, the most unscientific thing, or like counter-scientific, or I don't even know the word. It's beyond dumb, because here's what you're doing. Do you remember the cruise ship that was quarantined at the beginning of the COVID outbreak? That cruise ship there? And then all the doctors are coming out and saying, actually, this is the worst thing to do, because you're basically creating an incubation site. You're recircling the air in the same place, which means the people who don't have it are much more likely to get it here. So what are you going to do? Take quarantine isolation sites? Like, it'd be one thing if the government was saying at the beginning of the outbreaks, you know what, we're going to build special quarantine COVID treatment centers because we don't want the COVID patients mixing with the regular patients in the hospital, because we don't want someone going in for cancer surgery and getting COVID-19. Right? If you have COVID, we're going to build these COVID treatment centers that are sort of, you can understand that, right? Places where people can go for special COVID treatment because it's an infectious disease. That is understandable. But quarantine isolation sites, so you're going to quarantine a bunch of different people with COVID-19 all together, that just guarantees that everyone in those sites is going to end up getting COVID-19. And then if you're locking down other people who don't have it, these travelers, we don't know where they've been. Basically what you're doing then is you're taking travelers who you don't know where they've been, and you're putting them in these quarantine isolation sites and pretty much guaranteeing that they're going to get COVID-19. So that's the science behind that. Now, I say all that's nonsense. I say the government's lying there. I say they're just building concentration camps because they're evil. And you know me, I've never been a QAnon guy. I've been pretty measured on this whole COVID-19 thing, but I am not measured when it comes to internment camps for Canadian citizens. Remember when we had to apologize to the Japanese for doing that? As we should have, because you can't do that. Right? It was wrong to intern the Japanese during World War II. It's wrong to intern Canadians during COVID-19. So what are these COVID sites even going to be for? Right? We're going to have 15 COVID sites, and the government of COVID and other related issues. So is it just for people with the virus? Is that a place they can go for treatment and not infect others? That's quasi-reasonable, still impractical because Canada's a large country and transporting people to these sites is impractical. If you just had every major city would have we're trying to build COVID treatment centers on the outskirts of every major city to reduce the risk of infecting people in hospital, that'd be one thing. But the fact that they have this so ambiguous, like, if I'm preaching against the government's handling of COVID-19 and they deem that to be a threat to the safety of the people, should I be quarantined? Like, and it doesn't give an answer there. It's so ambiguous. You can't build concentration camps and have an ambiguous purpose for them, because then they're going to turn into concentration camps. So we have the WHO, which has now said, the lockdowns are unscientific, because we knew this is the flattening the curve. And we've said this from the beginning. This is even the mandate from the beginning. The flattening the curve, what it's supposed to do is it doesn't save any lives long term. What it does is it prevents an immediate spike. And then what happened in Italy, right? What happened in Italy is they didn't have the amount of respirators to deal with the population that got it. It was an aging population. Italians are very emotive and they hug a lot. It's a culture where diseases can transmit rather easily. And they didn't have the resources to handle it. And that was a problem. So that's why we did the 14 days. The 14 days has now turned into 6+ months. We're at 6 months now, half a year. It's 14 days has turned into 6 months. And we have literal concentration camps being built. Here's what I might want to start with, but think about this. When does the government, how quickly can the Canadian government build something? 3 to 5 years? To build 15 concentration camps, how quickly can they build it? Now, if the Nazis could build them quite quickly because they were a fascist government and they're like, we need to kill the Jews, and we need to kill the Poles, and we need to kill the gays, and we need to kill this, and we need to kill this, we need to kill this, see Kyle, let's march around Hugo Boss uniforms. Okay, we got that. But the Canadian government might be a lot of things, and Justin Trudeau is a lot of things. Efficient is not one of them, okay? No one will ever accuse me of accusing Justin Trudeau or the Canadian government of being efficient. So how long is it going to take to build these things? Like, do you think they can get 15 concentration camps, federal quarantine/isolation sites up and running within a few months to help with the COVID-19? Or are they going to build these over a year and are still planning on having coronavirus for another year? And if they're still planning on having coronavirus for another year, well, then this is ridiculous, because you see what Sweden has done and how it has worked and how they do not have these mandates, and how it took them less than a year. So if you're talking about anything that is, if you have a plan to build concentration camps for COVID-19 that goes longer than 6 months, the amount of time that it clearly took Sweden to get this all under control without any of these ridiculous measures, well, then you're ascientific. And this has never been about listening to the scientists. This has always been about control. Like, this is, I mean, this is terrifying. And this is also a reason why I was so firmly against Aaron O'Toole, okay? And I know this is Aaron O'Toole's idea, but Aaron O'Toole cannot be trusted because Aaron O'Toole lusts after power. Now, I've done a lot of research on O'Toole. I've talked to a lot of people who knew him in his time as a lawyer, his time as a politician. Aaron O'Toole, to his credit, okay, I'm not going to slander the guy here, Aaron O'Toole won't do what Trudeau does and enrich himself. Aaron O'Toole is not in politics to become a wealthy man. Aaron O'Toole is in politics to become the most powerful man in Canada. He lusts after power, not wealth. Trudeau lusts after both, O'Toole after one. But the power is more dangerous. Like, I do care that Trudeau's embezzling basically millions of dollars through his phony charitable stuff. And yes, that's bad, and it's corrupt, and it makes you disdainful of him. But the more dangerous thing to the country long term is the lusting after power. Like, that's always the more dangerous thing. And this is what O'Toole is. And O'Toole has shown the willingness to cooperate and collaborate with any sort of extremist group that will, help him, get a few more votes, push him into the leadership role. Which is why I don't trust him here, because is Aaron O'Toole the type of guy who will dismantle these massive overreaches of government authority? Like, that's what we have to ask ourselves. And I get it, he's going to be better than Trudeau, okay? No one's going to be worse than Trudeau. And despite what I have against Aaron O'Toole, like, I'm not going to be a crazy person here saying he's the exact same as Trudeau. But what I will say is he does lust after power, just as Trudeau does. And on this one metric, this incredibly dangerous metric, he's a failure, an abject failure, and a danger because he'll do it from the other side of the aisle. He'll legitimize it from the conservative point of view. So, what choice do we, like, I mean, what are our options here as Canadians? This is legitimately terrifying, and we have no one in government who's going to stand up to this effectively, right? You think the NDP are going to finally back down? You think the NDP are really against concentration camps for people who disagree with them? This is Jagmeet Singh's whole thing. Jagmeet Singh has been, always wanting to throw people in jail for hate speech and nonsense like that. But this is essentially the hate speech jails. Like, I mean, can the government give a guarantee that healthy people will not be put in these quarantine isolation sites? That the person, who's the guy? Chris Sky, who's going to be like the first person arrested, and the RCP is going after him for violating the coronavirus lockdown laws. So Chris Sky is going around. He's the jack guy going at the anti-mask protests. I might not agree with all his positions. I've outlined my position on coronavirus. He's outlined his. What I will definitely say, though, is he should not be facing any legal repercussions for what he's doing. The RCMP shouldn't be after him, and he definitely should not be thrown in a concentration camp. I'm very against concentration camps. It's one of those don't do, and I know you're thinking, hey, I'm a big fan of the UN Human Rights Council, and they just put China in the Human Rights Commission, and they have lots of concentration camps, so concentration camps can't be that bad. And if that's your position, then good for you, you're officially part of the United Nations. But to recap, we have literal concentration camps being built by the government. Are they going to be built within the next 6 months? We have the government that's defying the science on coronavirus now. Now the experts are saying, lockdowns are inefficient. We've looked at it. It doesn't make sense. Why keep doing it? But we keep instituting more and more totalitarian measures to deal with it. It's ridiculous. Like, my grandmother is at a nursing home. Her nursing home was just put on lockdown again, even though there's 0 cases there. There's 0 cases, and they put an internal lockdown in. Like, they can't even go down and play bingo anymore. Like, they all have to be locked down in the rooms, and that's inhumane. Like, that's going to kill people. Like, her sister, who's 97, she's already, gone a bit demented during this whole thing because she's been socially isolated for 6 months. And now I might never see her again. Because you don't know how long it lasts, and if she makes it on the other side, how much of her is going to still be left on there. It's inhumane, and it's cowardly politicians who want power, who want excuses, and then on top of it, when they institute these new laws without thinking, then you have the lawyers getting involved and saying, to mitigate liability, you should just keep everyone in their own rooms. That way no one can sue you for getting coronavirus, right? It's inhumane. Lawyers, politicians, ugh, what the heck? What the hecking heck? Heck the what? What the heck? Staying on topic of the glorious leader, Justin Trudeau, Justin Trudeau is mad at the Conservative Party, the official opposition, for opposing him. Yes, really. Justin Trudeau is mad at the Conservative Party because they have been obstructionists, because they have criticized him. Since he has come back from his proroguing Parliament, he has accused the Conservatives of wasting everyone's time on the WE scandal when he's trying to fight coronavirus. So he's trying to fight coronavirus in Parliament, and the Conservatives are talking about the WE scandal, and that's very bad for them. Does anyone remember the last month when this idiot actually shut down the entire Parliament? He just shut down the entire Parliament. So, oh, we're working for you. You shut down the government for a month to cover up for your scandal, and then you're mad that the official opposition is bringing this fact up, and then you're saying that they're trying to delay. He's actually trying to accuse the Conservatives of trying to shut down Parliament or make a mockery of Parliament or abuse parliamentary time and taking away from the coronavirus stuff, when he shut down the entire thing for a month for the WE scandal. Like, this is why we need better media. This is why I do this, because there's one article written in the National Post, one in the Globe and Mail, one in the Sun, and then we're done with it. The Toronto Star won't ever go against him. Press Progress, none of these things. I mean, Canada Land's good. They're left wing. They're pretty good on this. But if, like, Trump did this, such a massive screw up, this should be news for a couple of days. This should be news. It should have been trending on Twitter. He should have been embarrassed. He should have been laughed out of town. But instead, he's... Come on. I just don't know what to say anymore. And then there's an article out today where he's blaming Stephen Harper for making cuts. He's actually blaming Stephen Harper for his coronavirus response. This guy is unbelievable. Like, blaming the Conservatives after he shut down Parliament, for shutting down Parliament, and then blaming Stephen Harper for his failures in coronavirus response. It just goes to show everything I've been talking about. The media's asleep at the wheel. The left doesn't care. Canadian politics is dead. I really hope I get a chance to get to the story about the new Conservative Party being made. Like, Ontario's going to have a Conservative Party soon. The Conservative Party's not a Conservative Party. Doug Ford's a lefty. Like, and listen, I was a big fan of Doug Ford at the beginning. I was pushing his virtues. I even had a great nickname for Doug Ford set out, right? When Doug Ford was going to do great things, for the first couple of months when he was fighting against Marxist nonsense, and he was talking about blah, 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 it was like, okay, you know what? We'll call him the Duggernaut. When he does something cool. It has a great name. It's a juggernaut, but it's the Duggernaut. It promotes a sort of unstoppable force. It plays off that he'll be like the bad guy. It'll be great. I'll nickname him that. I'll be the one who called him that. But you can't call him that anymore because he's a lefty. He's just Fat Trudeau. Fat Trudeau. He's just a fat Justin Trudeau. He's reinstituting green policies. Right now, on the floor, he's talking about the green energy stuff, which he ran against, which I was so in favor of, because I hated those green energy plans. Oh my, they were making the environment worse and costing everyone money. Like, they didn't help anything. Well, now he's reinstituting them. I guess that's what happens when you hook up with Patrick Brown's people. They got back into office somehow. Patrick Brown's entire office is either running Doug Ford's show or running Aaron O'Toole's show, and it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Ugh, Patrick Brown. Ugh. Ugh. So, Ontario, expect a Doug Ford carbon tax coming. Expect a bunch of Doug Ford useless green energy products, programs that make the environment worse, and make the economy worse. Just expect Doug Ford to be a fat Justin Trudeau. He's Fat Trudeau, Fatty McTrudeau. That's all he is now. And the Colorados are now starting a new party, the Blue Party. I like that. I think they're trolling Aaron O'Toole as well, which is something I can appreciate. Trolling Aaron O'Toole because he was true and blue, and Doug Ford is neither true nor blue. He's just a fat Justin Trudeau. Fatty McFat Trudeau, Doug Fat Trudeau. Such a disappointment. Such a disappointment. Testing increased 800%. Cases go up 25%. Lock everything down again. Even though, Whatever Dr. Theresa Tam says, I guess we have to do. Supreme leader. God damn it. All right. Our next story is the Hunter Biden story. So, bombshell coming out of the New York Post, you see this. This New York Post obtained emails from Hunter Biden showing unequivocally that he was using his influence, right, to push the interests of Burisma, the Ukrainian gas company he was on the board of, making $50,000 a year, for his vice president father, Joe Biden, who he did arrange meetings for. So Hunter Biden uses influence to hook up Joe Biden with different lobbyists in favor of Burisma. Nepotism, hello? Misappropriation of government power, hello? The crazy thing, though, is that broke on Twitter, and Twitter and Facebook block this story. You can't see it. What kind of Orwellian nightmare are we living in where you have an actual story breaking? Emails have been obtained. We can see the emails. We can see them. You can read the article and you can see the emails. But Twitter deems it just inappropriate material. Can't have it. Like, what did Twitter say? This is probably should be the most terrifying episode of Uninterrupted you're going to ever see. Because, yeah, the tweet violated Twitter rules. So I showed you it. Hunter Biden emails show leveraging connections with his father to boost Burisma pay. Upcoming visit of, like, they have emails. So physical evidence. They say Hunter Biden emails showing leveraging connections with his father to boost Burisma pay. That's what the tweet said. You read the article and it shows clear evidence of that claim. And it violated the Twitter rules. And the Twitter rules seem to be nothing bad about the Democrats. Nothing bad can be said about the Democrats. It's like we have another Orwellian thing we'll get to later with the Mazie Hirono, Amy Coney Barrett trials. But, like, here is the major tech companies in the height of an American election, when an issue that's already been raised, right? Hunter Biden, this is the whole Ukraine scandal and the impeachment thing. So this has been a major global story before. The New York Post gets emails, prints a story, provides their evidence, and Twitter censors this, violates Twitter's rules. Twitter needs, what I'm saying, Twitter needs to lose, if they're doing this, Twitter needs to lose its privileges as a platform and be named a publisher. And they should be responsible for everything that's put on Twitter if they're going to play this game. And every single terrorist attack, where a terrorist had a Twitter account, what this means is, so I've explained this before, but a platform versus a publisher. So a platform would be like, Bell, Rogers Media, in the States, Verizon or AT&T, right? So you're just a platform. So if I call on Bell or AT&T, wherever I am, and I'm like, hi, my name is Osama bin Laden, and I want to commit a terrorist attack, and I'm planning, I'm on the phone with Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and we're like, yeah, death to America. Yeah, death to America to you today. Hi, Abu Bakr, I want to, blow up a target. It's like, oh, how about we blow up the Sky Needle in Seattle? Yes. Here's the type of bombs we'll need. Okay, here's, on May whatever, we're going to meet here. So here you have people planning a terrorist attack, but they're doing it over the phone. Is AT&T or Bell responsible for that? No, we say no, they're just a platform where people use. Bell isn't liable for what people say over the phone lines, and that's what Facebook and Twitter have been saying. Like, we're just a platform. People put things out, we have rules, if they violate them, blah, blah, blah. But here we have a case where they're clearly taking a side as a publisher, right? They're choosing editorially what they do and do not want on their platform. Remember, the Ayatollah Khomeini still has a platform on Twitter. The literal Ayatollah, one of the worst people in the world. And here, we have them acting like a publisher. So a publisher would be like the Washington Post or the Toronto Star, right? In the sense that if Osama bin Laden writes an op-ed in the Toronto Star advocating for, like, listen, there's too many kafirs and we need to genocide the infidels, and this is who should die, and this is who should die, and this is why we need a caliphate, and here's who should die, and here's who should die. I'm going to go on Al Jazeera later to talk about who should die. Al Jazeera, home of Mehdi Hassan. And here's who should die, and here's who should die, and here's who should die, and here's why terrorism is good. The Toronto Star publishes that. They can be liable for what's said there because they're a publisher. They're choosing to publish that, right? They had editorial control. Twitter tries to say, oh no, we don't really choose what is this and this and this. But here, pretty deliberately, I don't see anything in this tweet that would trigger a sort of a computer program to shut this down. If it was Hunter Biden, N-word, emails show leveraging C-word connections between his father, who is a, N-word, C-word, K-word, J-word, I don't know, to boost his father's Burisma pay, death to the Jews, right? If that was what the tweet was, you'd say, okay, right? There's a couple things that would have been flagged there as tweeted inappropriate. This, Hunter Biden shows emails leveraging connections to his father to boost Burisma pay. There's nothing in that that should trip up an algorithm. That was done by a human being in Silicon Valley, probably, who saw the story, didn't want it going out, and took it off Twitter in an attempt to help Joe Biden get elected. Here's Twitter and Facebook actually interfering in American elections. This is election interference. If you're going to be this is clearly a publisher. And what Donald Trump needs to do here is they need to declare and push a bill saying that they're publishers, which means that if the Ayatollah Khomeini has a tweet out there, and some Iranian dissident's family member is killed, they can sue Twitter for giving the Ayatollah a platform and incurring hate, right? Hamas has tons of accounts on Twitter and Facebook and whatever. Whenever they launch rockets at Israelis, every Israeli citizen injured or killed in a terrorist attack should be able to sue Twitter because it's clearly not a thing, right? Every do the other thing, like every white nationalist who posts something out, every black person who experiences a racial hate attack should be able to sue Twitter because of the hate they're promoting. And once they see that, they might go back to, oh, you know what? Maybe we should not interfere and just go back to being a platform and not a publisher. But this is Orwellian. So here you have Joe Biden's son, who had no qualifications to be on the board of Burisma. This is a dishonorably discharged person from the military, cocaine problem, no life skills, party animal, cheated on his pregnant wife with a stripper or something, or married his brother's wife or something and treated her with a stripper. I can't remember it exactly, but pretty awful things to do. And this is the guy that got paid $50,000 a year to sit on the company of a Ukrainian natural gas conglomerate. I believe Mitt Romney and Nancy Pelosi's kids are also on there. And this is how Joe Biden's worth so much money, right? This is the standard political corruption game: is you don't get the money, you don't take the money, you're smart enough not to take the money, but you set up either a Clinton Foundation or a Biden Foundation, and that people donate to the Clinton Foundation, that gets you influence here, or you put your son-in-law on your campaign staff and you pay him for hire. That's what AOC did with her boyfriend. And that's what Ilhan Omar did with the husband of the person she was cheating on with, her then boyfriend, mistress, whatever it was. She was the mistress to this guy. She paid him hundreds of thousands of dollars to run her campaign, right? There and now end up in a relationship. So there, you ended up paying yourself. That's the standard way of doing this. Everyone needs to read 1984, because this is Ministry of Truth level nonsense. All right. Speaking of Ministry of Truth, we have the Canadian education system. This is a story I skipped over. But the Black Lives Matter movement is coming to a school near you. So here's a story from the National Telegraph. So the National Telegraph received insider information from police in school. So the Black Lives Matter and critical race theory, formerly part of school curriculum. So we did receive this stuff, and I'm going to read you from the article. If you want, go to the National Telegraph, follow it on Twitter, Facebook, wherever, LinkedIn, whatever, wherever it is, you follow there. And I'll read to you what is now being taught. And this isn't the Catholic school system. This isn't I guess it's a public school system. But this is now in Canadian schools. And this is the type, and there's a lot of misleading information. This is what is being taught to our kids. And I'm just going to read this whole thing, and then we'll go over it later. It was a series of videos that shocked the world, taken by bystanders on May 25th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They showed the last moments of George Floyd's life. Mr. Floyd was arrested by police just before footage was taken. He was accused of passing a fake $20 bill at a local store. Witnesses say he didn't resist arrest, but he claimed he was claustrophobic. He fell to the ground when officers tried to put him in the police car. Actually, we'll go through this we'll break it down as it goes on, because Witnesses say he didn't resist arrest. However, there's a video showing that he does resist arrest. Now, not violently. He's clearly high on drugs. It's fentanyl and methamphetamine. Okay, it's an interesting combination. I don't recommend either. I definitely don't recommend doing both. Kids, don't do fentanyl or meth. Bad news bears. But, you know, now, I'm not saying Derek Chauvin was right. I'm not saying this wasn't, police mispractice, but you can't just say, oh, allegedly passing off a $20 bill, right? What George Floyd does is allegedly. But so when you listen to when they say allegedly or claimed or accused of, and when they're definitive on when things happen. Okay? So yes, he was shown to be resisting arrest, but clearly high and just not wanting to go into the police car, right? There's problems. Now, the police didn't handle it well, but there. The videos show the African-American handcuffed and sprawled face down on the street. Officer Derek Chauvin has his knee pressed on his neck. The officer kept his knee there for nearly 8 minutes. During that time, George Floyd gasped that he can't breathe. He's asked his mother, please, for his life. Again, we see in the previous videos, he's talking about the fact that he can't breathe multiple times, and that's even before they have his knee on his neck, which is a fact they omitted. Now, again, I think there should be charges put in the George Floyd case. I've talked about why it's not second-degree murder, but I've talked about why we can possibly pursue manslaughter charges here. You're going to kill me, man. Tell my kids I love them, he says. Mr. Floyd's cries become fainter as he is weakened. 3 other officers watch. They ignore witnesses who urge them to check Mr. Floyd's pulse. Finally, the man falls silent, then dies. Derek Chauvin has since been fired and charged with second-degree murder. The other 3 officers were also fired. They charged aiding and abetting Mr. Chauvin's actions. It's a ridiculous charge you'll never be able to prove, but they've been charged anyway. Again, this is in the education system. They're pushing this forward, and they're not going to teach, why was, like, this is, I don't know what grades this is meant for exactly, but it's an elementary school kid. So, like, are you planning on teaching elementary school kids in Canada, how to, the intricacies of aiding and abetting laws in the state of Minnesota? No, I don't think so. I don't think there's anything. So here's the next part. A movement on fire. The death of one African American at the hands of an officer is terrible, but it is not an isolated incident. I like how they have to specify the death of anyone at the hands of an officer is a tragedy. But in fact, the U.S. police kill about 1,000 people annually, according to the Washington Post newspaper. Strikingly, blacks die at instances that are more than twice the rate of whites. That's especially shocking since blacks make up just 13.4% of the population of 331 million. Okay, again, that Washington Post article they're referring to, not all 1,000 of those deaths are unjustified, right? They're not talking about unjustified police shootings. So I don't care what color you are, right? If you're shooting at the police and they shoot back at you and you die, that's not police brutality, right? We need to be talking about unjustified death shootings. Now, if you want to break down the statistics, again, like I hate these arguments because when you make this argument with, blacks are just 13% of the population, but they're this and more, then you have to talk about, okay, but what is the violent crime rate among African-American youths, right? And this Washington Post article, when it's been broken down by Harvard economist Roland Fryer, who happens to be black, right? He'll show you that in rates of interaction with police, right, police are actually more likely to use deadly force against a white man than a black man. Now, you can say this for this, police are actually also more likely to use excessive force, non-lethal excessive force, against a black man than a white man, and this might lead to a generalized perception of police brutality among the black community. I'm not going to undermine that, right? None of the listen, if we break down all the stats and go through everything line by line, it's not going to work out perfectly for your side, and that's any side you're on. If you're on a side here, right, if it's just I'm on team red, I'm on team blue, the narrative's never going to be perfect for you. Oh, that rhymed, nice. The disproportionate, again, bolded disproportionate. So again, I just broke it down, but hey, who needs to be accurate when you're learning things in a school? The disproportionate number of minorities killed by U.S. police has energized a movement called Black Lives Matter, BLM. BLM calls for nonviolent protests against police brutality and other violence directed at black people. Not all Black Lives Matter protests have called for nonviolence. Some of them have explicitly called for violence. We've all seen the video, the Black Lives Matter march, pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon, right? There have been Black Lives Matter shooting. In Dallas, police officers have been killed because of Black Lives Matter. In Los Angeles recently, 2 police officers were shot. randomly because of Black Lives Matter. So to say that the entire movement is nonviolent is false. Now, to say that it's totally violent is also false, but there's evidence to say it's not a completely nonviolent movement. And yes, it's a decentralized blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it runs like the Muslim Brotherhood, where it's decentralized, so no one can be blamed for anything else in the group, but it's nonsense. This grassroots group, it's actually a corporation. This grassroots, I'm going to change group to corporation, just willy-nilly. This grassroots corporation formed in 2013 after George Zimmerman, a neighborhood watch captain in Florida, at least they didn't call him a police officer, so that's acted, was found not guilty of murdering Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old African-American student. A physical altercation occurred between the two men. Zimmerman claimed he acted in self-defense when he shot the unarmed black teenager. Many people were outraged by Mr. Zimmerman's acquittal. They used the hashtag Black Lives Matter to share stories about inadequacies in black neighborhoods. We can go into the George Floyd thing, but the George Zimmerman thing. The George Zimmerman thing was a classic case of overcharging. It's the same thing the George Zimmerman problem is actually the same as the George Floyd problem, in the sense that you're never going to get this officer in second-degree murder, and what George Zimmerman was not first-degree murder. No, you could have argued manslaughter and gotten Zimmerman. I guarantee you, if they pushed for manslaughter or third-degree murder, George Zimmerman would have gone to jail. But because they tried for first-degree murder, they couldn't prove first-degree murder, which was planned, willful intent, which means they couldn't prove that when George Zimmerman saw Trayvon Martin, his first thought was, I'm going to kill this kid. And, I'll claim it's about he was a whatever, but I just really want to kill this black kid. I just want to kill him. You're not going to prove that was his thought. And you're probably not going to prove that was Chauvin's thought with George Floyd either. Go for third-degree murder, go for manslaughter. You would have gotten the case that way. But again, they want to overcharge to appear tough, and it's part of the thing. It feels a movement. And next thing, mass protests. In 2014, police killed 2 other African Americans, Michael Brown and Eric Gardner. Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot, that was a lie. Why is this in the curriculum? If you're going to talk about Michael Brown, you should talk about the fact that was a false narrative. That forensic evidence disproved the fact that the hands up, don't shoot happened. Michael Brown was shot, and forensic evidence proves this. He was shot while lunging for the officer's gun after he's on video robbing a convenience store. We have a video of him robbing a convenience store. After he committed a crime, he was confronted by the police, and forensic evidence shows that he was shot while reaching for the officer's gun. Terrible. I hope he didn't die. But no. That was illegitimate. But it's all thrown into here. BLM organized street protests in response, and the movement became even more prominent. But the killing of George Floyd took Black Lives Matter to a new level. Videos of Mr. Floyd's death circulated rapidly on all media. For the first time, many white Americans clearly witnessed the injustice that many black people suffer at the hands of police. So no more allegedly, it's injustice, right? The Michael Brown was injustice. Black people are treated unfairly because every time they rob a store and then try and take an officer's gun and kill them, they end up getting killed. Protests exploded across the U.S. throughout the summer. As many as 26 million Americans, both black and white, protested. What about Latinx? What about Latinx? This is sexist. Protested Mr. Floyd's death. There were pockets of looting and rioting, but protests were largely nonviolent. Billions of dollars of damage was done. We literally saw cities on fire. We saw CNN saying mostly peaceful protests with buildings behind them burning. There were pockets of looting and rioting, but the protests were largely nonviolent. Yeah, 93% nonviolent. Yeah, only 7% deadly. Some protesters want officials to defund the police, to reduce funding to police departments. They believe that racism is systemic in policing. This is what's being taught in our schools. Our schools about America, right? As well, they say police deal with too many problems that aren't trained to handle. They want lawmakers to redirect some funding to groups with skills to address large societal issues. That's a video for a whole other day, and sort of the fallacies here and how government funding works and what they're demanding. So much of policing right now is directed towards homelessness, drug addiction, domestic violence, says Black Lives Matter founder Alicia Garza. What we need is increased funding for housing, for education, for quality of life in communities. This is what I hate about the teachers union. This is what I despise about them. And I had the conversation here. So when we're talking about defund the police, right, institutions are systemically racist, right? Police are racist, so take away their funding. But they also say, oh, there's so much inherent bias in the school system. Okay, take away the funding. There's bad teachers here, right? We have bad teachers sexually abusing kids, and they're getting away with it. And just like the police union protects police officers in ridiculous fashion, probably the most ridiculous thing is if you're Canadian, you're a Raptors fan. Remember the Masai Ujiri when the Raptors won the championship and that a-hole security guard claimed he assaulted him, and you see the video and clearly he was just being probably a dick, maybe even a racist dick to Ujiri. But the police union is defending this guy and he's suing him and his wife is suing him because he was so traumatized or whatever. I get that. There's serious problems in the police union. And you're right. But when it comes to, should we take away the powers of unions? Well, that means you have to give up some power too. Right? That means if the teachers union really wants to push for social justice and take away the power of the unions to protect bad apples, that means you're a union too. That means you have to do something too. You have to put a bit of your money where your mouth is. But when it comes to applying the same standards to themselves that they do to other people, whoa, no way. Quick action. Minneapolis responded swiftly to these calls. On June 7th, the city disbanded its police force. How is that going for you, Minneapolis? It is replacing it with a safety and violence prevention department that will supervise smaller divisions of police officers. Other cities across the U.S. are considering or have begun taking similar moves. Watch this blow up in everyone's face. A different view. Not everyone wants the changes, however. Some believe BLM, Black Lives Matter, threatens society. The federal government doesn't support the Black Lives Matter movement. U.S. Attorney General William Barr claims BLM protests are conducting urban guerrilla warfare. And President Donald Trump has sent federal police to control some protests. In some cases, that caused more violence. Prove it. Where? When? You already admitted that there's looting and rioting. The defenders say, 93% of the protests were violent. That means 7% of what you claim, is 26 million people are violent. It's more than 1 million. It's more than 1 million people being violent. By your own numbers. And they sent Donald Trump, there's millions of people being violent and looting, and Donald Trump sent federal police officers to stop them. That's bad. A global awakening. Last part, thankfully. BLM is the largest movement in U.S. history. Really? It has also struck a chord around the world. People marched against police brutality in Belgium, London, Tokyo, and elsewhere in the summer too. Again, that's because the international left is morally vapid and is more anti-American than pro-human rights. What about Canada? Blacks are so often treated poorly here as well. Again, declarative statement, not allegedly. So are Indigenous people. Since April alone, police have killed 6 Indigenous men and women. Okay, again, since April, these cases haven't been gone through court. We don't know the cause of death. Is Regis Paquette, who had some mental health issues and jumped off the balcony getting away from police, is that police killing her? What if the Indigenous men, again, what if it's a justified killing? I think all deaths are tragic. But if I take a gun and I start going into your neighborhood, what if I go into a black church, right? And I start shooting black people, and a police officer comes in and shoots me in the head, stops me from killing more black people. Would the school system say, police are anti-Semitic because they killed a Jewish man today? They murdered a Jewish man. You'd say, no, that crazy Jew, Daniel Boardman, was going into a black church and being a racist murderer, someone had to shoot him in the face. And if I ever have a mental break from reality and I'm in anywhere shooting anything up, please put me down. Please stop me. This is sane Daniel talking about potential future Daniel going on a murdering spree. Stop me from murdering people. If the police shoot me while I'm actively in the middle of a mass murdering spree, I hereby declare no anti-Semitism, no homophobia, no transphobia involved. Who knows if I'll be a woman at that point? Gender fluidity. So hundreds of thousands of Canadians have also been taking part in the protests. There is systemic racism in Canada, admitted Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who said in blackface, who says in my sentence, Indigenous people, Black Canadians, and racialized Canadians are far more likely to suffer violence at the hands of the police. This is being taught in our public schools. It's critical race theory is going to be taught in there. And I know it because I have cousins going through the education system to become teachers. And they're all learning, you don't learn how to be a teacher in teachers, OCAD? No, that's the arts one. OSAF, that's the lamp. It doesn't matter. The U of T teaching education department, you don't learn, I've seen it. They don't learn how to be teachers. They don't focus on lesson plans. They focus on critical race theory. They focus on embodied experiences. They focus on mumbo jumbo. They focus on feelings. Like teachers aren't taught to be teachers. They're taught to be leaders of the revolution, driving everyone insane. So again, I highly suggest you read this article in the National Telegraph. Like this video, share the video. You know what to do. Share the video. It really helps out. Subscribe, click the bell. If you're on Facebook, like the page, follow the page. Do the same thing to the National Telegraph, because we need independent media in Canada. And do you really think any mainstream newspaper would have the balls to go after the school system for pushing critical race theory? I don't think so. Number one. All right. Second last story of the day. Amy Coney Barrett is being confirmed and going through hearings to be part of the Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett is a Catholic mother of 7. 2 of her children are adopted from Haiti. This she has faced criticism from one of the leaders of intersectional critical race theory, Ibrahim X. Kennedy, who was excoriating her for having the audacity to adopt 2 black children from Haiti, raise them in America, and giving them the opportunity to succeed in life in a free country instead of the hellhole that is Haiti. How evil of her and her husband. How dare they give those children a better life and shower them with love and affection. Disgusting. But this wasn't even the most insane thing. Enter Senator Mazie Hirono from Hawaii, who should be an honorary form of the squad. She was the squad before the squad existed. She should be, I think she can kick Ayanna Pressley out of the squad. I think we put Hirono on there because she's clearly crazier and squattier. So let's see this video of her questioning Amy Coney Barrett on sexual preference. Here's just, watch this nonsense.
This morning, Senator Feinstein asked you a question about the Supreme Court's 2015 decision in Obergefell v. Hodges, a case in which the court recognized the constitutional right to same-sex marriage. And I was disappointed that you wouldn't give a direct answer on whether you agreed with the majority in that case, or if you instead agree with your mentor, Justice Scalia, that no such right exists in the Constitution. So even though you didn't give a direct answer, I think your response did speak volumes. Not once, but twice. You used the term sexual preference to describe those in the LGBTQ community. And let me make clear, sexual preference is an offensive and outdated term. It is used by anti-LGBTQ activists to suggest that sexual orientation is a choice. It is not. Sexual orientation is a key part of a person's identity. That sexual orientation is both a normal expression of human sexuality and immutable was a key part of the majority's opinion in Obergefell, which, by the way, Scalia did not agree with. So if it is your view that sexual orientation is merely a preference, as you noted, then the LGBTQ community should be rightly concerned whether you would uphold their constitutional right to marry. I don't think that you use the term sexual preference as just, I don't think it was an accident. And one of the legacies of Justice Scalia and his particular brand of originalism is a resistance to recognizing those in the LGBTQ community as having equal rights under our Constitution. In 1996, Justice Scalia wrote a dissenting opinion in Romer v. Evans defending a state's ability to openly discriminate against the LGBTQ community. In 2003, Justice Scalia wrote a dissenting opinion in Lawrence v. Texas defending a state's right to criminally prosecute someone for same-sex sexual activity. 10 years later, in U.S. v. Windsor, Justice Scalia wrote another dissenting opinion, this time defending the federal government's right to deny federal recognition of same-sex marriages. And of course, 2 years after that, in Obergefell, Justice Scalia wrote yet another dissent, and this time he argued that there was no constitutional right to same-sex marriage. So under Justice Scalia's judicial philosophy, which you have told us is your own, states could openly discriminate against the LGBTQ community. Same-sex couples could be denied the right to get married, and they could actually be thrown in jail if they engaged in sexual intercourse. There are an estimated 11 million adults who identify as LGBTQ living in this country since Obergefell was decided in 2015. Approximately 293,000 same-sex couples have gotten married. And many of these people are rightly afraid that if you are confirmed, you will join with other conservative members of the court to roll back everything the LGBTQ community has gained over the past 2 decades and push them back into the closet. Now, 2 sitting justices are already calling for Obergefell to be narrowed, if not outright overturned. Just last week, Justices Thomas and Alito issued a statement concurring with the court's decision to deny cert in Davis v. Irmo, a case involving a former Kentucky County Court who refused to issue marriage certificates to same-sex couples. They accused the court of, and this is Justices Alito and Thomas, they accused the court of, quote, reading a right to same-sex marriage into the 14th Amendment, even though that right is found nowhere in the text. And these 2 justices signaled that Obergefell is a problem that only the court can fix. So, coupled with your use of the term sexual preference, coupled with your view on precedents, and that a justice's view or her own analysis of the constitutionality should overtake or overcome precedents if it's in conflict. So this is why so many people in the LGBTQ community are so concerned that you would, in fact, join the signaling that these 2 justices have already put out there, that Obergefell will fall by the wayside.
Now, I'm sorry for subjecting you to so much Senator Mazie Hirono, but that's what she put on her own Twitter page. So this is what she wants the world to see, which is insane, because this is the new thing she's trying. They got her on, you said you don't care about someone's sexual preference. So when asked about how she'd rule for gay rights, Amy Coney Barrett said the right thing. Sexual preference makes no difference to me. What you prefer in the bedroom doesn't matter. And Mazie Hirono said sexual preference is an outdated term, an archaic term, and a homophobic term. Says who? Says who? Says Webster's Dictionary. Today, Webster's Dictionary changed the dictionary to say, well, yes, sexual preference is an outdated term because it implies that there's a choice in sexuality. No, it doesn't. Like, I'm heterosexual. I have a preference to do sexual activity with women, right? Now, is it a choice? Yes, whoever I'm intimate with, or whoever you're intimate with, these are choices you make. Now, is it a choice that I'm attracted to women over men? No. Is it a choice that someone who's gay is attracted to men over women? No. But you have a preference to do what you want, right? There's other things broken down on there, right? There's certain kinks that people have that other people don't. Those are preferences, right? I could have sex with a man. I don't want to. My preference is to not do that, right? And some gay people have a preference to not sleep with women. That's fine. This is what you prefer. None of this implies that, oh, being gay is a choice and you should come to God. He was simply saying, I don't care if people are gay. And the left turned into, oh, this is an archaic term and outdated. And then the entire Democratic Party jumped on this. And then Webster's Dictionary jumped on this and changed the definition to say, oh, yes, it's clearly homophobic. Amy Coney Barrett clearly hates the gays because she said she doesn't care about someone's sexual preference. And Amy Coney Barrett said she would treat gay people the same as straight people. And this is why she's homophobic. This is what Mazie Hirono is saying. And Mazie Hirono also goes on to ask her Catholic mother of 7 if she was a rapist. She basically questioned her, have you ever sexually assaulted anyone? No. Have you ever been accused of sexual assault? No. This is where we are as a country and society now. Senator Mazie Hirono land. And then Webster's changed it. Like, I know I have gay followers. Maybe a few trans ones. Like, I feel so bad for you these days because you're being turned into like these, human shields of the social justice movement. Like, you might be a lesbian watching this show. And I don't care. I'm not the most religious guy in the world. Probably not the least. Actually, not some of the least. Not the most. Definitely not the most. I don't care. Be a lesbian. You won't date a trans man. It's your sexual preference to not date people with penises. Is that because you were born, again, sexual preference is all fine. Once you, again, like everything else on the left, once you throw the trans into it, it all falls apart, right? So you're a lesbian. It's not a preference that you like women. It's just the way you were born. But you're not allowed to prefer, you want to date a woman without a penis instead of a woman with a penis, and all of a sudden you're evil. Like, this is, get me off this planet. Just get me off this planet, please. All right, final story of the day. It's a two-parter. Islamic extremism, we have a problem, okay, globally. So here's a story coming out of India. Uttar Pradesh, Hindu girl beheaded after she refused to convert to Islam. Husband Ijaz and friend Sohab Akhtar nabbed. So you can show the article up there. I'm going to read you a bit from it because it goes to what I've been saying for a while, okay? Here it is. In a barbaric act, 23-year-old Hindu woman has been brutally murdered by two Muslim youth after she refused to convert to Islam after marriage. The incident has occurred in Uttar Pradesh. According to the reports, the Uttar Pradesh police on Monday had recovered a beheaded body of a woman in a forest area near Pradeep Nagar under the Chopin police station area. The police officials said that the father of the deceased, I can't pronounce that name, identified the deceased as Priya Sonier of her shoes and clothes. The father of the deceased informed the police that that his daughter Priya had married a Muslim youth named Ijaz Ahmed against the wishes of the family. About a month and a half ago, according to the father of the deceased, Ijaz was persuading her to convert to Islam, which she disagreed. The police officers said that Ijaz kept her at a lodge in Orbra area, as continuously pressuring to convert to Islam. As the Hindu girl refused to convert, here's the important part. The angry Ijaz called upon another friend, Sohab Akhtar, and the two Muslim youth carried out prayer to a nearby forested area and killed her. That's a key line. This is the problem. These aren't isolated incidents, and I talk about this. Serial killers are so incredibly rare. What is even more rare is a pair of serial killers. Like Kalar Homolka and Paul Bernardo will always be the most famous pair in Canada because it's so very rare that someone so sick and twisted gets together with someone else and they go and murder people in a spree. But in order to connect people to do heinous acts, you need a shared ideology. And that shared ideology here is clearly radical Islam. Okay? There is a major problem where someone can say, I'm planning on murdering my 23-year-old wife because she doesn't want to convert to Islam. Can you help me? And then a friend says, oh yeah, that makes sense. She won't convert to Islam and she married you. We should chop her head off because that's dishonoring you. And yeah, totally makes sense. Totally makes sense, right? Because when it's two people doing this, it means the problem is with way, way more than two people. When it's one person doing something, you can say it's an isolated incident. Once it's more than one and they share an ideology, it's a cultural problem. It is a cultural problem here that people feel like they can, forcibly convert people to Islam and then murder them if they don't. Okay, so, this has gone some steam in India because, the left in India and the media there is pushing this big interfaith marriage stuff and how wonderful it is, but you have these problems all over the country where it doesn't end up in fairy tale endings. Not to mention, and more it's a Pakistan thing, but India too, Sikh and Hindu girls being kidnapped, raped, and then forcibly married and forced to convert to Islam. Also, guys, talk to your spouse. Like, if you're ever in interracial or interfaith relationships, talk to people, talk to the person you want to marry, make sure that you're okay with them not converting to Islam, right? If you're going to marry someone and he really wants you to convert to Judaism and you don't really want to convert to Judaism, you want to stay a Christian, you want to stay a Muslim, or someone really wants you to convert to Christianity but you want to stay a Jew, that marriage isn't going to work. I know interfaith relationships that are successful, and I'm not saying don't marry outside your faith, okay? But if you want to be in a monofaith relationship but you're of different faiths and neither is willing to budge, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Talk to each other. Now, the other similar thing here is the Charlie Hebdo thing. So bring up this tweet, and I'm bringing up this tweet by Tom Quiggin because he does the best job of describing the key point from this article. So the person who did the second terrorist attack at Charlie Hebdo, he called his family in Pakistan before he did it and informed them what he was going to do. And his father said, go do it. This is great. The entire family will get into heaven if you go and commit this terrorist attack. This is sick and twisted. This is a culture that supports terrorism, and that's Islamic extremism. Here is this is an outlier, this isn't like this. No. Something needs to be addressed here. This is the second time people tried to murder Charlie Hebdo for printing the cartoons. The man called his father and his family, told them he was going to be a terrorist, and they said, high five, you're going to get all of us into heaven. All of us. We're all going to heaven because you're committing this murder. Second murder, let's all hold pencils up in the air. That will solve the problem. Right? And where's the backlash? Right? Where's the public outcry? And the fact, and I've said this before, this is the thing. You gotta change the honor shame calculus here. Right now, what these mass murderers have done, it brings honor in their sick little inner circle. Not in the other parts of India, but because these two men who murdered the Hindu girl in India, they felt, hey, this woman is dishonoring us by not converting to Islam, so to regain honor, we should murder her, right? These family in Pakistan, oh, someone's drawing pictures of the Prophet Muhammad, we should murder them, bring back our honor, right? We had remember when everyone tried to kill Salman Rushdie for writing a book? Right? You have to change the honor shame calculus, which means when acts like this happen, what needs to happen is the media needs to have a concerted effort and ask the elders of the community, why is this happening? Go to the people, why is this happening? Do you support this? And then put the pressure on the elders in the community here to say, do you justify this, do not justify? And if they're saying, yeah, well, it's justified, she wouldn't convert to Islam, this dishonors us, then you put that out. Then you expose this. You have to force the elders to say, no, we disagree, this is dishonorable. Right? And then people know the next time someone wants to murder their wife for not converting to Islam, he will know, hey, if I commit a murder and I chop someone's head off for Islam, what's going to happen is the media is going to ask my grandparents and the elders in this community if they support me, and they'll be forced to disown me, and then that will bring dishonor to our village nationally. So I don't want to dishonor the village, so instead of murdering this woman, I'm going to divorce her. And that's what should happen. So thank you so much for watching. I know this episode went a little bit long, but Canada, have a great night. You know, like the page, share the thing. You know what to do. Click all the buttons. I love you. You love me. Get a tattoo of my face onto your face. You know, click the Patreon if you really like me. Blah, 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 blah. See you next Wednesday. Same bad time, same bad place.